A company says bring your whole self to work. Bring your culture, but leave the anger at reception. Bring your identity, but not the complaint file attached to it. Bring your background, but please not the criticism it taught you. Bring your pronouns, and also bring lower salary expectations. Bring your trauma story for the employee panel in March, but do not ask why your manager keeps promoting the men he golfs with. Bring your voice. Bring all of it. Right after legal approves the microphone. You know this slogan. You have read it on a careers page, a tote bag, a lanyard, a vinyl wall decal in a break room with one working coffee machine and a passive-aggressive note about the dishes. It sounds generous. It sounds warm. So let us read the fine print nobody printed. That slogan is not an invitation. It is a casting call. And the institution holding the auditions has a budget, a brand, and a legal department, and all three of those things have very firm opinions about which version of you gets the part. This is a corporate autopsy. We are going to open the body of modern corporate inclusion, peel it back, and look at what is keeping it alive. And the thing keeping it alive is not justice, it is performance. Here is the thesis, stated cold before we earn it. Corporate inclusion becomes fake the moment it refuses to threaten corporate power. And here is the test you can carry for the rest of your working life. Real inclusion changes power. Fake inclusion changes language. Hold that sentence. We are going to use it like a scalpel, and we are going to use it more than once. Start with the lie at the center, the whole self line. No company wants your whole self. Your whole self has bad moods, unpopular opinions, a long memory, and a precise sense of what you are worth. Your whole self knows the exact moment it stopped being paid fairly. Your whole self occasionally wants to stand up in the meeting and say the true thing instead of the safe thing. They do not want that self. They want the useful self, the grateful self, the aesthetically diverse self that photographs beautifully on the careers page and says almost nothing in the compensation review. The emotionally available self that tears up on cue during the storytelling segment, and the politically harmless self that never connects the tears to the org chart. Corporate inclusion does not mean they want all of you. It means they want the parts of you they can photograph, monetize, quote in a newsletter, and manage in a meeting. Now, before this turns into something it is not, let me be exact about the target, because this is where lazy commentary dies in a ditch. This is not an attack on inclusion. It is an attack on the counterfeit. Real inclusion is one of the best things a workplace can build. It means fair pay, promotion criteria a stranger could read and apply, protection when you report something, a disabled employee who gets the accommodation on the first email instead of the fourth, a complaint system that does not function as a list of people to monitor. That version is expensive. It costs money, it costs comfort, and it costs executives some of their power. So the market did what the market always does. It built a cheaper version, slapped a logo on it, and put it in a slide. The cheaper version is slogans, panels, modules, a rainbow logo for 30 days, and Heritage Month emails written by an intern at 4:55 on a Friday. The rainbow logo, by the way, has better travel restrictions than some of the employees. It appears in certain countries and stays politely home in others, depending on the local risk profile. Corporate conscience, it turns out, has a region setting. So what do they actually mean by the word? When a company says, everyone belongs here, translate it. You are welcome here as long as your identity is useful, your opinions are manageable, your emotions are brand safe, and your complaints do not create legal, reputational, or managerial inconvenience. Belonging in the corporate dialect is conditional. The condition is that you stay convenient. You can see it the moment you walk in, the lobby, the wall of faces, beautiful, varied, global, lit like a perfume ad. Now follow the hallway to the room where the promotions actually get decided and count the faces in there. Different faces in the brochure, same fear in the building. Different backgrounds in the head count, same hierarchy on the org chart. Different Heritage Month posters every few weeks, same retaliation pattern every time someone reports a director. Let that one sit. They diversified the room, then kept the room obedient. The room was never the point. The decisions made inside it were, and those did not change. You can fill a boardroom with every kind of person on earth and still run it on one unspoken rule. Speak when it helps the brand. Fall silent when it costs the brand. So why pour millions into the appearance of fairness instead of the substance? Because the appearance is the asset. And here's the example, because the concept means nothing without the Office movie playing behind it. A public crisis hits the news. Within 72 hours, every company on the planet posts the same statement in the same font with the same 3 sentences. Then the internal version arrives. They host a mental health webinar at 12:30, scheduled neatly over your lunch, cameras encouraged, while the team is so understaffed that people are eating protein bars over spreadsheets and answering Slack from the bathroom stall. Burnout, apparently, respects calendar availability. The webinar ends. The understaffing does not. But there is a recording now, and the recording is the asset. You know this meeting. You have sat in this room. You have watched the same executive who left your complaint unanswered for 6 weeks put on a purple lanyard and deliver a talk about empathy with a slide that says, "We see you." You did not feel seen. You felt counted. The modern corporation discovered that morality has marketing value, so it built a department that turns ethics into presentation slides. And somewhere in your building right now is a woman with a flawless LinkedIn headline, a soft and well-trained voice, and a deck called Building Belonging Together. On slide 47, she will explain psychological safety to a room full of people who are afraid to ask why their manager still has a job. She is not a villain in the cartoon sense. She believes the deck. That is what makes the deck work. She has company. There is the HR director who can deliver devastating news in the cadence of a meditation app. There is the external consultant with a 90-slide PDF and a daily rate that exceeds 2 of your colleagues' monthly salaries combined. There is the manager who discovered that the word tone can end any conversation he is losing. These are not evil people plotting in a basement. They are functionaries of a machine, and the machine has a job, and the job is to make the company look fair without making it act fair. Now watch the machine's favorite trick, the rebrand, because corporate morality is weather dependent. When the 3 letters were fashionable, they went into the annual report in bold. When they got risky, the work migrated into a PDF called Culture Strategy. When the politicians started shouting, it was renamed Belonging. When investors got nervous on an earnings call, it resurfaced with no press release as talent optimization. Nothing died. It just changed clothes. Same department, same deck, same consultant, same executive signature at the bottom of the email. The only thing that changed was the label on the folder. Understand what that tells you. They do not have values, they have positioning. They do not have convictions, they have a risk register. They never once stood in a room and asked, "Is this right?" They asked, "What can we safely say this quarter without losing the account?" And this is where the word in the title earns its place, and also where it falls apart. The company is not awake. It did not have a moral awakening in a conference room in 2020. It did the only thing a corporation knows how to do with a powerful idea. It absorbed the language of the moment, sanded the dangerous edges off it, and sold it back to you as culture. The corporation does not become woke. It becomes fluent. It learns the words. It learns the posture. It learns the calendar months, the hashtags, and the correct face to make during the moment of silence. But it never wakes up. It monetizes the alarm clock and goes back to sleep. Which brings us to the trap. And this is the part you feel in your stomach if you have lived it. You are included right up until the second you become inconvenient. Take Maya. I am inventing her, but you already know her because there is one in every building. Maya gets pulled into the planning meeting because leadership wants the panel to feel authentic this year. And Maya is well-spoken and well-liked and carries a story, so she tells it. She talks about burnout, about caring for a parent at night and shipping deliverables by day, about staying functional when functional costs everything. The room goes silent in the good way. People clap. The CEO finds her afterward, holds her hand in both of his, and tells her how moved he was. HR pulls a sentence from her talk and posts it on the company page with a warm filter and a heart from the founder. For about 3 weeks, Maya is the face of how much this place cares. Then Maya, encouraged by all of it, takes the slogan at its word. She emails her manager and asks for actual workload relief, not a webinar, relief. And in that one email, the same honesty that made her inspiring on a stage becomes a problem on a spreadsheet. On Monday, she was resilient. By Thursday, she is struggling with capacity. The story they loved in public becomes the liability they manage in private. Nobody is cruel about it. That is the worst part. Everyone is very supportive while she is moved off the project that would have led somewhere. Maya brought her whole self to work. The company kept the part that fit on the slide and returned the rest. You have watched a Maya happen. You may have been one. Because here is the rule the slogan hides. Inclusion becomes investigation. Belonging becomes documentation. Psychological safety becomes a sudden, very serious conversation about your tone. The feedback they begged for becomes negativity. The courage they praised last month becomes a careful question in a meeting you are not invited to about whether you are really a culture fit. Corporate inclusion adores your identity, right up until your identity starts filing complaints. This is where HR walks in, and we have to be precise about HR because people keep getting it wrong. HR is not your friend. HR is not your enemy. HR is the immune system of the institution, and on the day you file, you are the infection. That is not cruelty, that is the design. Expecting HR to protect you from the company is like expecting your spleen to side with the splinter. So learn the difference between being heard and being protected, because the company will spend enormous energy making them feel like the same thing. They will let you speak. They will thank you warmly for your vulnerability. And here is what "thank you for your vulnerability" actually means. It means the information has been logged, the speaker has been categorized, and a calculation is now running in a room you cannot see. Being heard is an event. Being protected is a structure. Most companies hand you the event and skip the structure entirely. You should learn the rest of the dialect too, because it will save you. We hear you means we have received the sound waves and are now deciding whether ignoring them creates legal exposure. We are on a journey means we have no destination and no timeline and would like credit for walking. This is a safe space means this room is being remembered. Assume positive intent means stop noticing the pattern. We value every voice means we value every voice at the same volume, which is mute. We are listening and learning means we have learned that listening is cheaper than changing. Once you can translate the language in real time, the meetings get a great deal shorter and a great deal worse. And you know exactly how this works because you have nodded along to all of it with the face you practiced in the elevator. This is the point where people start using the word cult, and I want to use it carefully, once, and then keep moving. Inclusion is not the villain. The villain is the structure. The company manufactures sacred language, demands public agreement, stages confession, punishes heresy, and seats its executives at the altar as moral authorities. That is not culture. That is obedience wearing a name badge. Start with the sacred language. Belonging, allyship, psychological safety, authenticity, lived experience. None of these words are bad. Most of them describe things worth wanting. But repeat any word enough times inside a building that pays you and it stops meaning anything and starts doing something else. It becomes a password. Say it correctly in the meeting and you are safe for another quarter. Fumble it, or worse, ask what it actually costs, and you are flagged. The words are soft, the consequences are not. Then there is the mandatory enthusiasm. It is no longer enough to be respectful. You are expected to perform belief. You cannot simply attend the training, you must engage. You cannot simply treat your colleagues decently, which was the entire point. You must treat them decently in the approved vocabulary, on camera, with feeling. You cannot even disagree like a functioning adult. You must disagree in a way that reassures the room your heart is still in the right place. The performance becomes the test, and the performance is graded, and the grade goes somewhere. Then there is the confession. The training asks you to reflect on your bias, to share something vulnerable, to examine your privilege out loud, in a circle, with a marker and a flip chart. In the right setting, among people you trust, that can be meaningful. But look around this particular circle. Your manager is in it. HR is in it. The person who writes your review in November is in it, nodding gently, taking what they will later describe as mental notes. It is not vulnerability when the person grading your performance is sitting 3 chairs to your left. Call it healing if the brochure wants to. It is evidence collection with softer chairs, and everyone in the circle knows it. Then there is heresy. Question the program and you get sorted into a category: resistant, not aligned, problematic, unsafe, not a culture fit. And the genius of the category is that it ends the argument before it starts. The company never has to answer your objection because it can simply diagnose you for having one. You asked why the resource group has no budget? Interesting that you would frame it that way. You asked why the survey results never produce a single policy change? Let's unpack the energy you are bringing. The label does the work an honest answer would have to do, and at a fraction of the cost. And presiding over the whole liturgy is the leadership priesthood. The executives become moral narrators, the same people who approved the layoffs by spreadsheet, trimmed the benefits, and let your complaint die of old age, now stand at the front and deliver the sermon on empathy and belonging. The hand that cut your hours writes the email about how much the company cares. And you are expected to receive this with gratitude, because the alternative is to be the one person in the all hands who is visibly not moved, and that person gets remembered too. Nobody says it out loud. Everybody in the room understands it. This is how inclusion turns into obedience training. The company swears that everyone has a voice. What it does not mention is that the voices come pre-sorted into safe and dangerous. The safe voice sounds like this: I love our culture. I am so grateful to be here. I am excited for the journey ahead. Say those things and you are fluent, you are aligned, you are going places. The dangerous voice sounds like this: why have wages been flat for 3 years while the executive bonuses set records? Why is the promotion process a state secret? Why does no manager ever face a consequence? Why is burnout being rebranded as resilience and sold back to us as a wellness perk? Say those things and you are negative, you are difficult, you are not quite a fit. They want voice without consequence, feedback without obligation, participation without power. Here's the movie you have already seen. The company runs the anonymous inclusion survey, and the survey is anonymous in roughly the way the office fridge is communal. Technically true, spiritually fraudulent. Everyone tells the truth into the little box because the little box promised. A clear majority says promotion is unfair and trust in leadership is low. Leadership receives this. Leadership responds with a webinar, a listening circle, a fresh values poster by the elevator, a newly appointed belonging ambassador, unpaid of course, it is an honor, and a follow-up email with "We hear you" in bold. At the end of all that motion, the salary bands are still hidden, the criteria still vague, the same managers still picking the same favorites, the same complaint channel still routing your concern to the person you are concerned about. Enormous activity, zero structural change. That is the signature of fake inclusion. It is deafening where it is safe and silent where it would cost something. Which brings us to the cleanest cut in the whole autopsy: symbolic inclusion against structural inclusion. Symbolic inclusion is posters, panels, spotlights, hashtags, branded months, a pronoun field in the signature, and a smiling stock photo on the careers page. Structural inclusion is transparent pay bands, written promotion criteria, anti-retaliation rules that get enforced against powerful people, a complaint channel that does not report back to the accused, managers who lose their jobs for cruelty the way they would lose them for theft, and accommodations that arrive before the person breaks. Symbolic inclusion changes the brochure. Structural inclusion changes who gets hired, paid, promoted, protected, and believed. So say it again, now that you have the evidence. Real inclusion changes power, fake inclusion changes language, and the company will reach for the language version nearly every time because the math is brutal and the math is honest even when the company is not. It is cheaper to host a panel than to close a pay gap, cheaper to post a statement than to discipline an executive who hits his numbers, cheaper to launch a resource group than to rebuild the promotion system, cheaper to celebrate your people than to protect them, cheaper to say belonging than to share power. Corporate inclusion is welcome in the building as long as it stays cheaper than justice. Now let me show you what the machine actually produces, because it produces a person. Call it the approved employee. The approved employee is diverse but grateful, honest but never disruptive, vulnerable on the panel but never angry in the inbox, authentic but inexpensive, brave but not litigious, traumatized in a way that inspires, not in a way that implicates, underpaid but professional about it, burned out but resilient, visible in every photo and obedient in every meeting. The approved employee brings their whole self to work and then leaves the most dangerous parts of that self in the car, locked in the glove box next to the parking receipts where legal cannot find them. The company adores the approved employee. It promotes the approved employee to be the face of the next campaign, though rarely to be the head of the next department. And every honest worker eventually feels the gravity of it, the slow pressure to round yourself down into something brand safe, to sand off the parts that ask questions, until the version of you that clocks in at 9 is a careful press release of the person who parked the car. You have felt that pressure. You felt it the last time you rewrote an email 3 times to make a reasonable complaint sound grateful. And here's the part the brochure will never touch. Watch which conversations are allowed in the building and which ones make the room go cold. The company will discuss identity for hours. It will discuss representation, belonging, allyship, awareness, and heritage until the catering runs out. But move the conversation toward wages, toward workload, toward layoffs, toward outsourcing, toward executive pay, toward the word union, and watch the temperature drop and the meeting suddenly run out of time. The company will discuss every form of power except the one printed on your paycheck. That is the whole line between harmless inclusion and dangerous inclusion. Harmless inclusion talks about who you are. Dangerous inclusion talks about who owns the decision. One gets a panel, the other gets an investigation, and you can watch the hierarchy sort people in real time. The exhausted woman gets invited to share her journey at the storytelling event because her exhaustion is moving, and gets left out of the meeting where her workload is set because her exhaustion is inconvenient. The Black employee gets the Heritage Month feature, the warm post, the founder's comment, and then gets skipped in promotion season by people who genuinely cannot see the contradiction. The disabled employee, on the 4th accommodation email, watches the disability awareness graphic go out company-wide from an account that never answered emails 1, 2, or 3. And the worker who says, "I do not feel safe speaking honestly here," watches HR write down the words "low trust," as if the trust were the worker's personal failing and not a report card on the institution. You know these people. Some of them sit near you. One of them might be you. This is the extraction, and it runs on real pain, which is what makes it ugly. Companies love a good employee story. The immigrant story, the disability story, the story of something survived with a redemptive ending. They want it for the culture campaign, the recruiting reel, the founder's keynote where he gets a little choked up at exactly the right moment. So ask the only questions that matter. After the story aired, did the storyteller get promoted, protected, paid more, given real flexibility, a lighter load, a path? Or did the company convert their suffering into content, send a thank you note, and book the next speaker? They do not always want your story because they care. Sometimes they want your story because suffering photographs well. Remember this in your bones. Your identity is not corporate content. Your trauma is not a culture asset. Your honesty is not free consulting. And the final trick, the one that should make you angriest, is that the same gentle language built to protect you can be picked up and used as a club. You raise a real concern and you are told your tone was not inclusive. You decline another round of unpaid emotional labor and you are told you are not being a team player. You disagree with an initiative on the merits and instead of being argued with, you are labeled unsafe. You ask for an accommodation and you are praised for your courage in the meeting and managed out as a burden in the hallway. You criticize a leader and you are reminded, sweetly, that the company values respectful dialogue. Every word in the inclusion dictionary has a second edge. The company keeps that edge sharp, and it always knows which way to turn the blade. So here's the test. Carry it into every workplace, every program, every town hall with the free pastries. Does this change who has power, who has money, who has safety, and who faces consequences? Touch all four and it is real, and you should defend it with everything you have. Touch none of them and you are looking at theater with a budget and a catering line. Run the diagnostic the way a mechanic runs one. The company talks about belonging but hides the salary bands. It celebrates difference but punishes disagreement. It surveys you every year and changes nothing. Its resource groups have a logo and no budget. It spotlights marginalized employees on the website and overlooks them in the building. It teaches psychological safety while shielding the manager everyone is afraid of. Tick 3 of those and you have your answer. Run that test honestly across 100 companies, and most of them fail it on the first question. Real inclusion changes power. Fake inclusion changes language. What you do with the answer matters, so do not be reckless. This is survival, not a crusade. And since this channel is about surviving the machine, take 4 rules out of here, in this order, and do not let a single warm meeting talk you out of them. Rule 1. Never confuse being featured with being protected. The spotlight and the shield are issued by 2 different departments, and the spotlight is cheaper. Rule 2. Never confuse a listening session with a policy change. They will record the first to avoid doing the second. Ask, every time, in writing, what changed, and watch how fast the warmth cools when you want it on paper. Rule 3. Never confuse the language of safety with actual safety. A room is not safe because someone announced that it is. Treat every safe space as a professional space that is being remembered because it is. Rule 4. Never donate your pain to a brand that would not defend you in a complaint. If your story is good enough for the recruiting page, it is good enough to earn you a promotion, a protection, or a raise. If it earns you only applause, you were not the speaker, you were the content. And around those 4, the smaller habits. Watch outcomes, not slogans, because slogans are free and only the expensive thing tells the truth. Document patterns because one incident can be denied and a pattern cannot. Watch who gets promoted after they speak honestly and watch who does not, and learn the lesson the company is teaching whether it means to or not. Keep your receipts. Keep your identity separate from a brand that would borrow it and return it used. Never let a company borrow your pain for branding while denying you power in private. Which leaves the last thing, the thing underneath all of it. The modern corporation is no longer content to be your employer. It wants to be your community, your moral teacher, your therapist on a noon webinar, your family at the holiday party with the mandatory fun, your safe space, your sense of purpose, your tribe. It wants the entity that signs your paycheck to also hand you the meaning of your life, because a worker who finds meaning at work is cheaper to keep and far harder to lose. But it is none of those things. It is an economic institution. That is not an insult. It can be a good one. And yes, some companies do pieces of this correctly. Good, they should. That is called running an adult workplace. It is not sainthood, and it does not earn a parade. The instant a company starts using moral language to conceal power instead of constrain it, it stops being merely your employer and becomes something you have to defend yourself against, in a building with receipts. So keep your bearings when the lanyards come out. The company is not your church. HR is not your priest. The CEO is not your moral guide. The value statement is not scripture. And inclusion is not real just because the person exploiting you learns softer words for it. Hold the test all the way to the end. Past the posters, past the panels, past the woman on slide 47. Real inclusion gives people power. Fake inclusion gives power better vocabulary.